All right, welcome to the Superintendent Podcast. What about the Lyons Den? Like, welcome to the Lyons Den.
We could do that. We should let students name it.
We really
I think we
should.
should let kindergarten or first grade students.
That would be
name it.
that would be wonderful. And I gotta tell you, I had the first stomach bug go through the house this season.
Terrible.
Yeah, I heard the second grade at the Dole Bear decimated.
Can I tell you, it's going around there.
Yeah,
I was over there earlier today, and yeah. So it's not good. And right in time for the holidays, it's a bit of a worry.
It was tough. My son and daughter, thank God, doing better. Don't know how people with 3 kids.
Yeah.
But if you're watching or if you've watched regularly, you'll notice it's usually 3 of us. Kara is not here. You fired her. So do you want to tell us what?
Yeah, she wasn't cutting it. So no.
No, she's fine. She's still here.
No, seriously. No. In fact, no. She had another commitment and couldn't do the podcast today. And she's the grease that makes
she's awesome.
So much of this go. She is such a force, and we're very, very lucky to have her. Very lucky to have her. You were talking about names for the podcast. When you say this, it makes me think. I was in a kindergarten class, and the students often don't remember names, or they often don't remember my name, but they'll say, one of the students said, like, Mr. Tiger, how are you? And I'm like, close enough, right? Lions, tigers.
True.
It's good.
It is.
Good job.
It's
good
true.
job, But, no, I think we should absolutely give the podcast naming over to kindergarten or first grade. And we should have a few of them come in and talk about what their experience is like in school to kind of to fill us in a little bit.
They would love that, and I think it makes it. My son gets sad when he doesn't go to school, which is great. That's what you want.
Which is exactly what you want.
Now, with that said, I we talked about before how to pivot to this, but I think it's good to just start the show with it because it's awful, and I think we probably both feel the same way. Racist language being found, and not just in Wakefield. Even if you're on any of the community groups, you're seeing it in more and more communities.
Yeah.
But specifically, it was found in Wakefield in the high school, and I'll turn it over to you if you want to comment about it a bit more, other than just condemning it for everything that it's worth.
Yeah. No. This is actually our 3rd instance since September that we've had this happen. We had someone put racist graffiti on a tree outside of Galvin Middle School. Then that was the first incident. The second incident, it was found on North Ave on the soccer field fence. You see all those signs.
Yep.
For businesses. Someone put racist graffiti on one of those signs, almost at the farthest point away from the middle school, right? And so that happened on a Friday evening. A few weeks back, and just recently we had, I sent out a note yesterday, there was racist and homophobic language found in a girl's bathroom here at the high school. And so we're working with the police, and the administrators are looking at film, looking at video footage to see if they can't figure out who might have been involved with this. It's really troubling when this happens. People in our community, it's unsettling is an understatement, right? It really makes students and parents feel unsafe. It raises a lot of questions. Questions like, why can't we figure this out? We have video cameras. Why can't we figure this out? Well, where it happened at the high school, it happened on the first floor in a corner, actually right around the corner from my office. But that hallway, we have that small gym that is used by community members all the time. So we have, in the course of a week, we have a few hundred people in and out. So we're trying to narrow down the time. We're trying to figure out, was it done during the school day? Was it done in the evening? But that's where we are with that right now. We're also really looking and trying to reconnect with student groups that are impacted, right? And also kind of revisiting the work that we're doing to think about raising awareness and allyship, because students are kind of the best check and balances with one another. when students kind of can create these conditions, and adults as well, so please, it's not just students, but when we can create these conditions where this is just absolutely unacceptable, we're not going to do it, or in the event that something like this happens, that we're able to figure it out very quickly. So that's where we are. That's what we're working on right now. But it's a hard situation. It's unsettling. There are students that feel unsafe and are threatened by this, and we understand that, and we're trying to not only support them, but also think about how we can do a better job with teaching and learning around this, better job creating allyship, and kind of that's the space we're in right now.
No, well, because you make a good point, because I think sometimes the best analogy I can think of, at least right now, is, when we do parent-teacher conferences, or you talk about parent-teacher conferences, and you say sometimes the parents who show up are usually not the parents you have to talk to, right? It's the people who aren't there that you need to get to.
Yeah.
And I always wonder, how does a system get to the young people if they're writing that stuff, or they're feeling that way, and they're feeling that so isolated and so alone, and so filled with despair that they have to transgress against, have this type of hatred against somebody for something they can't control. Obviously, they're not joining any of these human rights commissions. Obviously, they're not going to any of these awareness events. Obviously, the people who go to those events are already people who are allies and whatnot. How does the school system begin to try to get to the kids who are feeling the despair? And my unsolicited opinion is it might be what you just said. It's, to a certain extent, you have to create the student-centered approach where the students create checks on their themselves.
Yeah. The single biggest deterrent to this type of behavior is creating an environment where kids feel like they belong. Kids feel like they have at least one adult who knows them and cares for them, right? There's a significant amount of, excuse me, there's a significant amount of research around what differences that those types of things can make, right? And it sounds easy to say, but the level of conversation, the level of the topic that you're bringing up, which is the perpetrator, what despair might they be in to kind of sink to that level of behavior, right? That's really a level that we don't often get to in conversation because we're so offended by the act. But that's part of what the school's responsibility is, to support and to work at kind of rooting out and kind of doing their best to reconcile or trying to help and support. It starts off with kind of, again, developing this, a community, a space where belonging is a first priority.
No, you're absolutely right, because I think, to me, at least when I always viewed this, and I've seen these acts, when I see these acts among young people, obviously, right, you think of how people will feel who are targeted, right? And your first thought is, how do you make sure that they know that they're safe and loved, and that we would never let anything happen to them? But there is that other part that says, if one person wrote it, that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't more.
Correct.
And I think there is an issue, and this is not Wakefield, I'm saying this is a society of whole, among people who see the culture opening up. Because you saw this even, especially among the gay marriage debates, I remember in 2002, 2003, when the culture starts to open up to a certain extent, it becomes harder for us to try to figure out, how do we also, instead of just protecting these children, how do we make sure we get to the people who may have these views and show them, hey, this is wrong.
Yeah.
How do we make them realize, how do you get somebody to change a mindset that is so full of that type of hate? And it is a deeper question and a deeper issue. But it's something I think that, as a society, we've sort of forgot to confront. We forgot.
So
Yeah.
I would add to that. I would say, and not only have we forgot to confront, and it is something that we've regressed probably a decade's worth of time in the last few years, right? And
Yeah.
so we don't look at the root causes as much anymore. We just look at the behavior, and the response
That's
is,
true.
condemn, punish, separate from. So when I say condemn, punish, separate from, condemn the act, punish the student or child, and if it's egregious enough, separate them from school, period. When, it doesn't quite work like that.
Well, yeah, and if you do a lot of reading on the topic and you just want to get into it, and you see this, this was actually very prevalent too. God, this is going way deeper than see. This is what happens when Karen doesn't get here. But if you go into Karen's like talk about Wakefield, but no, if you go into the deeper sense of even stuff back in when the KKK was big on their second go around during the Civil Rights Movement, a lot of that came from this idea of young people, specifically young men, feeling a lacking of belonging and feeling it's a level of loneliness. That even though they had a good family and a support system, there was a level of youth anger.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a community or a system or somewhere or how to channel that energy.
Yeah.
So they channeled it towards hate because I'll use today's models, but now there's a podcast or now there's a tweet stream or there's a Twitch that tells them, hey, this is a way you're angry and you're alone and you have no friends because of these people and you're right and they're wrong and you belong in our community. Isolate from everybody else.
Yeah, I can see the analogy. I don't want people to watch the podcast and think that there's a link between.
Oh God! No, by the way,
and
KKK. Just so you know.
Good
by
God.
the way, we've got to wait. See, this is what happens.
Kara's gonna say, "What did you? I wasn't there. What happened?" Yeah. No. All joking aside, no. I think your points are well made, but the takeaway, what I hear you say is that this feeling of isolation or despair or is often at the root of this behavior that is just crying out to be seen, to be heard, to be relevant, to be important, right? But it hasn't changed. That equation or that calculus hasn't changed around root causes of behavior.
No, it sounds good, and I do think the Wakefield school system we were talking about before. We were talking about finding, the quality. We've talked about this a ton, actually, the quality of educators. And what is the best way to confront this? High-quality educators who can make meaningful connections to young people.
That's it.
And make them feel all of that
That's
stuff.
That's it. I feel, on a few of these podcasts, I've left these meetings and the podcast and have reflected on my talk or how much I talk or what I was talking about. And often I get a little carried away talking about the amazing work that's happening with teachers and students, or the amazing work that's happening with counselors and students. And I think the reason I get a little carried away with that because those are the types of interactions that kids carry forward, right? Those are the types of things that kids remember, right? They may not remember the Pythagorean theorem, but they will remember how their 7th or 8th grade math teacher taught them. Right,
so
how
true.
they cared for them, right, and that's the takeaway, and which goes back to what we started talking about, which was kind of really our responsibility to develop a community and a climate that focuses on belonging.
No, it's true, and so on that perspective, I do want to switch gears because I know that was in Wakefield news, but if you watch the news in general. Strikes in Beverly, Gloucester, Marblehead. Not here, thank God. I was going to say, do you want to just give a quick update about how, it seems like, again, as somebody who has a student in the system, the teachers are wonderful. The teachers seem happy. They see, it's at least the kids in my son's class seem happy. I know that I can't extrapolate that across the spectrum, but But, do you want to just comment on how, I mean, do you just watch that and you're like, oh, thank God?
Part of me does.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The simple answer is part of me absolutely does. We settled the teacher contract here last spring, after just about a year of negotiating. So we were at it for some time. Um, in the climate that we're in, if you're doing negotiations well, no one's going to feel like they won, right? I think being on strike it just creates a real hardship for the community. What is also very difficult that few people talk about is the strain that it puts on relationships, right? Even when you get back to work after being out for 10 days, right? So today is the 10th day, right? Or ninth day.
Yep.
For those North Shore schools. So I'm sure that they're getting close to the end of their negotiating, and my hope is that they can get back to school and hopefully repair the relationships as quickly as possible to care for kids, right? Because if you're spending all of your energy and angst around, any number of things that are easy to be aggrieved about, right? Like you're not available enough to focus on the job, which is caring, showing love and care for kids, providing teaching and learning for kids, and PS, which is still a great gig. It's still a great gig, no matter what anyone might think. It's a hard gig. It's very hard, difficult work, but it's a good gig.
No, it is. And I tell everybody, I think it is a vocation, right? I know people say call it a career or a job. Like, it's a vocation. I almost feel like, to a certain extent, it's almost like when you're called to be a priest to a certain level, because you have to be willing to dedicate your life to a cause.
Yeah.
But it is amazing. Even like the little work I do at the boys club, when I see now, like, you see the generation, you're like, and I still call them kids, but they're adults.
Yeah.
And you see that they remember things you said, and you're like, oh my God, I did that? Like,
yeah.
And it's profound and meaningful work. With that said, to kind of keep going, our budget is, where are we in the budget, actually?
We are steaming ahead. We had our tri-board meeting.
Yep.
Where we get the financial forecast of the town. We had our town meeting, which was just this past week. And now we're kind of really in the throes of kind of creating a budget. One of the challenges for us is just really looking at space, right? So I think I shared at the tri-board meeting that, we had 60 families we had to turn away from Doyle. Now, Doyle is a smaller single school, smaller than our kindergarten footprint. But our preschool, our pre-K and kindergarten numbers, as well as grade 1, are kind of are higher than they have been, right? And so that's a budget driver that we're looking at. We're looking closely at the building that's happening in town, right? We've worked very closely with Steve Mayo. So we did an enrollment study at the high school when we prepared to build the new high school. And Steve and I worked very closely together. We had a consultant who provided data, did a 10-year forecast about what enrollment is going to look like in Wakefield. And so in terms of the high school being the right size, it looks right now that it's going to be the right size, but it does raise the question about, what do we do if our numbers continue to grow at kindergarten and grade 1? And we'll just watch that very closely.
So what do we do?
Well, I mean, we have at Dolbear and at Woodville, we have some space there, and we've brought on what we call bubble classrooms, when enrollment in one grade kind of gets a little larger than the next grade, bubbles out. What we do is we open up another classroom. We add a teacher and open up another classroom. The difficult part is where we might have one room available to do that at Dolbear and Woodville. At the smaller schools, we don't have that space. So it just gets a little tricky. But I think, we're just watching that very closely. We also have other schools in town that aren't being used that in a worst case scenario we could always look at.
Well, you read my mind because I was going to say, would we ever consider Steve Mayo? See, we can't not have Carrick because Steve's going to hate this question. Well, not hate it, but the budget I'm going to ask is, would we ever consider expanding Doyle? Or if you have 60, I mean, opening up a school to just be another early elementary center?
It's a great question. Well, the good news, I don't think so. I don't think we're there yet. Steve's a pragmatic guy.
He is.
Right?
Yeah, oh, he's great, by the way. I don't.
He is. I think. He's very pragmatic and very skilled at problem solving, and so we don't always agree on on solutions, but he's a great partner to work with, and so. But I do think we have talked about kind of the idea of bringing a modular in for Doyle to expand space, so that we can do student therapies in another space, or have another classroom in another space, and so there's a possibility of that. In my tenure, we've opened up 2 additional classrooms in what used to be just in a big open gym, right? So and the town built that out themselves, and kind of and also took on the cost for that. So I think we've been pretty pragmatic in kind of taking what comes. So because we've had some success in making those moves, I think, as long as we can continue to collaborate and work together, we're going to be prepared and ready. We also have we'll have some pre-K classroom space at the new high school.
True.
Yeah.
So that's a good pivot. Before we get to the late start, because I want to talk about that, but do you want to just give a quick update on how things are going at the high school?
Oh my goodness. I don't know how the steel workers that are here, we get 2 to 4 truckloads of steel a day. And I think they put in all the steel that comes in on the trucks every single day, like as a total, some zero. So everything that comes in is erected. And so it's amazing how quickly the steel is going up, and the frame of the building is coming together. We did a school committee tour on Monday of this week, and it's really something to watch. And so our TV production group also, they do a drone kind of aerial view, and so you can see it kind of being built. And so with the softball field has been done over. So when they started construction, they had to put in a new culvert. That's done. They had to cut through the outfield of what was our Burnett Field. That's all back together. The steel's being erected. The new softball field is all done and all in.
That's awesome.
It looks so good. But that's really exciting for our softball players and our girls team to see, like, our field is back together, so they're feeling pretty good about that. But the construction at the high school, I think, is moving along beautifully. Our site superintendent, Jerry Hammersley, lives here in Wakefield, and I think is a super talented guy. And I we were joking. At the rate we're going, we might be done ahead of the Voc, which would be interesting.
That definitely would be. But it does see, and I say this as somebody who knows nothing about construction. I mean, it does seem to be moving along, which is wonderful. I think it's, like I said, I think a school is the whole center of a town's life, and a community's life. So, I think this is wonderful. With that said, I know there was the talk about extending the school day, not extending the school day, excuse me, starting later.
Yes.
And I'm a huge proponent. I know we've talked about this before on the idea of what's interesting about education is that sometimes everybody knows what we should be doing. We all know that this is the right approach.
Yeah.
All the studies show it. Everybody knows it. Common sense knows it. But we still don't do it because society has set this up, and it is just too hard to move the train.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a late start. Do you think it'd be good for the kids? And then if so, how do you make it happen?
So I can start off with how do you make it happen? And so, The school committee has the responsibility of,
Yeah.
of creating start and end times, right? And so it's also something that needs to be bargained with the union, the teachers union, because it's a change in working conditions. So they're entitled to kind of be a part of that work, and they should be. So that's a part of it. But so there's a student services subcommittee, which are made up of school committee members that are a subcommittee. So the student services subcommittee has kind of taken on this work of really developing community feedback, right? So what we're doing is we're doing a 3-part series. We're calling them community forums. And the first community forum happened this past Wednesday night, where we welcomed in Dr. Judy Owens, who's a professor at Harvard, senior professor of neurology at Harvard. She's been practicing pediatric medicine for over 3 decades. She runs a sleep lab. She's just really a wealth of information and an expert in this area. She's on the faculty at Children's Hospital here in Boston. So just really has practical experience, as well as been part of teams that have helped districts learn about the science of, so what are the good reasons that these changes should be made, right? And so she was here this past Wednesday night at Galvin. This is a recorded meeting, should be available on WCAT. And so in her meeting, she spent about an hour going over some slides. It was a very, very thorough presentation. But the summary of it is the benefits of high school students especially, starting a little later in the morning, right, is kind of the social, emotional benefits, the cognitive benefits, the physical health and mental health benefits are really pretty well documented through research, right? The doctor shared, younger students can fall asleep earlier, but they're also usually the first ones up in the morning in the house, right? Older students, high school students, right, after the onset of puberty, the older students go to bed later. They become night owls, but often sleep later in the morning, right? So it's not only the amount of sleep, it's when they can sleep. And so, and I learned this the other night, right? So I just count minutes and hours, right? Like, so what is the optimal time? How do you just get that optimal time or that window, right? But a takeaway for me, or a few important takeaways. One of the biggest takeaways was it's not only that students are going to go to bed later, they're probably likely to not go to bed a whole lot earlier, but it gives them a little extra time in the morning to sleep more than they normally would. That's when their body wants to sleep. So that's a piece. The mental health piece, it's pretty well documented in terms of students' ability. Their executive function skill is decreased when they're tired. Their kind of decision-making, the quality of their decision-making falls off when they're tired. So those are important takeaways, as well as the physical health parts, right? And so there are some physical health parts that the doctor went into in her slides that it's a reminder, like and parents have all heard this themselves because many parents have been in kind of conversations about sleep, about their own quality of
exactly.
sleep, right? But they don't think of their children in this way. They think they're children. They're easy. They're durable. They can work through it. I work through it. And so all of those things are true. But we're in a place where if we know better, are there ways for us to do better? So, but the work that we're doing right now is Community 1 was about just getting to the science of this. What's the information behind it? The community forums 2 and 3 are going to be about engaging different stakeholders in the communities, in our community, to just hear from them, to hear what they think might be a positive and what they think might be a challenge, and then what we might do about that. And then at the end of this collecting of information in these community forums, myself, in conjunction with the Student Services Subcommittee, is going to make probably 2 recommendations or 3 recommendations to the school committee, which is these are ways that we might be able to address this notion of later start, right? So that's where we are right now. And there's no easy answer, and no matter what you do, it's going to have an impact on someone that's not going to be easy to overcome, right? But to go back to what you said, if we know that this can make a positive impact for a large number of students, and it's a public health issue, why wouldn't we give it a go? And you're spot on.
No, it's true, and you know, I know we're getting right at the half-hour mark, so I don't want to go too much longer, but I don't want this to end without us recognizing some of our fall sports are getting to the championship season, and we have some people going to states. Our cheer team, right?
So cheer team won, which was amazing.
Going to nationals. Yeah, they won the states.
Yeah.
They're going to nationals. You're correct.
Right? And so our band, under the direction of
Yeah, but that's expected now. You can't. It's
Not-
like the
it's not
Patriots. Yeah,
okay.
oh, you lost in the, you call us. You won the states. Of course you did, Tom. No, yeah.
You'll miss it when it's gone.
Yeah,
right?
it's so true.
Yeah, you'll miss
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah,
Like the Patriots,
like the
you miss it
Patriots,
when
and
it's
now we're
gone.
sad.
Right, but the band, our marching band, the fact that they won again this year back to back is amazing. Our cross country team again had another amazing season. I think the coaching staff there is amazing. Perry Pappas, he makes it magic for kids. So I can't say enough about them. Our soccer team made it to the sectional, made it to the Final Four in the state. And they played a terrific game. They could not have played. They could not have played harder than they played, or done more, right? And so, the defenders in the back, the Aidens, those guys could put on football helmets right now and start for our football team. They are like some of the best athletes that I've seen come through our school in a long time. Our guys up top.
Jack Millward. Oh
my God. He is just a phenomenal athlete, and not only is he a phenomenal athlete, he is a fierce competitor. So I don't think they take their wins for granted, but their losses, I think that kind of resonates.
No,
and hurts the heart a little bit.
It does.
The nice thing about, for example, Jack is we're gonna get to watch him in basketball, and I think he will perform in the basketball space similar to the way he performed in the soccer space.
No, it's true. It's, the thing about these athletes, and I say this with all the love in the world, all of Wakefield's athletes, I hope one of them goes pro, right? More than likely, their athletic career will end either in college or after high school. But to see the life lessons they're learning and the excitement and the values of wins and losses, and again, the community rallying around them, it's a community thing, and you see this, and it's such a nice approach. And
it really is. Mike Murphy, our new athletic director, has really just jumped right in with Danny Lum. And those guys are really just doing such a nice job with athletics, and our extracurriculars, obviously band. I know when you say again, I love that, but it's I think a testament, and it's what kids look forward to in addition to school.
But when I talk to, I have a lot of families still in the league. What they can't believe about the American school system is how so much of your life revolves around the schools, and to your point, it's the extracurricular, it's the band, it's the TV, it's the drama, it's the theater, it's the schools, and it's the sports. And to go back to it, to what we were talking about before, how we started. This is why I'm a good host. Watch me circle this all around. To go back to how we talked about graffiti and feelings of fear and not belonging. Whether you're an ally or somebody who would be driven to a point to write something like that, how do you confront that? Well, it's by building areas where you are forced to belong with people who you may feel differently than. And now all of a sudden they're your teammates, and they're your bandmates, and they're your friends and your colleagues. And now all of a sudden you realize that you're part of something. And I think, just the expansion of those programs speak to the quality of our program. I noticed even Wakefield Wrestling, by the way, seems to be growing quite a bit. Coach Ross Ickes, great coach, by the
He
way.
is an institution.
He is. He was my coach. I wrestled. Yeah. He was great. He tells everybody I was the best wrestler of all time. Not close. Not even close. I was so good that the really good players used to keep me in their locker.
Yeah.
So they always knew where to find me.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. That did not happen. But it was a good. Coach Ross was great. So
Yeah, one of the things that we're working on, and you can see it. You can see it. Our volleyball team, made states. Our women's team, and unfortunately, they were defeated by Weston, the number 1 seed. And but to see, and I've shared this before, so I won't go too far down this path, but to see how good the athletes are to and for one another.
oh, true. So
Right?
true.
Whether someone makes a great point, a great save, a great play, they just rally around one another. And that's the type of community that really makes a difference.
You're right, and I will say this. We'll leave this. So the Boys and Girls Clubs does a dodgeball fundraiser in the springs, right? And I will tell you, when we've had the local athletic teams play against each other, those games become the most fierce by far. But they are the most nicest, collegial.
Yeah.
They'll celebrate after. They'll make a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah, yeah.
jokes. The only time we've had any type of fights, and we've only had one fight,
Yeah.
and it'd be 50-year-old men who just
It's always us.
yeah,
Always us old
yeah,
guys.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
But all right, so are we forgetting anything?
So I just want to give a shout out. Today is a day that the Wakefield Education Foundation sent out their grant
Oh,
notices.
nice.
So WEF, the Wakefield Education Foundation, headed up by Carrie Mazzone and Melissa Holmes, 2 women that are really remarkable leaders. They work with their team and they raise money every year, and the money that they raise goes to teacher grants. And today's the day that they send out the grants, and they give teachers an email letting them know that they've awarded, or that the grant the kind of the grant submission that they proposed has been granted. They've kind of won the grant, or won an amount of money, which is, I can't say enough about WEF. I feel like they are remarkable, and I feel like they don't draw a lot of attention to themselves, but they do such a nice job and support our teachers behind the scenes. It's like one of many, many things that always goes
It's true.
unrecognized. So I just like to say thank you to them. The other piece that I'd like to bring up is, when we started this conversation, before we started, you had talked about U.S. News and World,
Oh, yes,
World
yes.
Report, and how our schools are doing, and what are the things that make a difference. Last week at school committee, we talked about what we call the vocal data. So after kids take MCAS, they can participate in a voluntary survey. It's voluntary, but the kids talk about the environment, they talk about climate, they talk about safety, and they talk about engagement, and kind of the feedback that we've gotten from students on that, I think is really, really powerful. Students talk about having a very high sense of belonging. High 80s, low 90% of our students are saying, school feels safe to me, and it feels like a place where I belong, and teachers care for me. They're proud that I work hard. They promote an environment where they want me to work hard, and they help me develop those skills. Really powerful stuff, But there are also some takeaways there that really we need to kind of focus on kids that aren't feeling that way. So we're digging more into the data, and so it's like going full circle. We'll end where we started.
That's true. And
And really, it's that really highlights the continued work that we need to do, right? And so,
well, and then
yeah.
no, I hope so. I know. Hopefully, Kara returns by the next one,
we're
right?
we're kind of out. It's not so balanced over
Yeah,
here.
it
doesn't
it's
feel.
funny.
Yeah,
And we're at 40 minutes. We don't go 40. If Kara's here,
know.
it'd
we're on schedule.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, thank you as always. Thank you to WCAT. Ian's the one who keeps us in line.
Yes.
Keeps us running. And again, I know I say this all the time, but I work with quite a few different community access channels. Wakefield is by far the best. They do not realize how good they have it.
Yeah.
And,
I've worked with them 3 times this week. I don't think I've ever done that before. I was at a a conference at Essex Tech, and they just happened to be covering the conference. They covered the community forum this week, and they're covering this, right? So I feel like 3 times in a week. I'll see if I can outdo that number. It's pretty amazing. So they do a really nice job.
They really, really do. So, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving.